St. Paul, Minnesota protesters arrived to confront a church by interrupting their morning worship service. Jim, we got to talk about this.
Yeah, BLM protesters with Don Lemon spiritually on board and gleefully in tow did invade a church. And Bill, the stakes are high. I'm a Christian, so these are my enemies, right? What do I do with this information? Well, I cannot help what my initial knee-jerk response was, but I can confess it here.
Instead of conflict and aggression, here's governance built on grace. Welcome to Gracearchy with Jim Babka. So welcome back for all of our fans and new listeners. Gracearchy is sponsored by the Zero Aggression Project, zeroaggressionproject.org. Zap the state and have a nice day. So, did you know that Jim was an accidental pastor? Well, I mean, it wasn't accidental. It was like intentional, but there wasn't. Can you explain any of that, Jim? Because it's really cool because in that moment, you had someone disrupt your service.
Yeah, maliciously so, and I didn't handle it correctly, and it was an accidental pastorship, so now I have two things to confess today.
So this is your confessional. We got a show to do, too. I don't think there's a better show to discuss that, though. You know, we're right in the thick of this. You have personal experience, and you took a free press case all the way to the Supreme Court, and that means something in this particular episode that we want to talk about. You likely have a unique take on Don Lemon's presence at the Church Interrupted.
And I hope people will find it compelling.
And here's something interesting. You're a post-status voluntarist, and I'm a wannabe, but I'm moving in that direction. And if you're going to explain the one place that federal government might actually be necessary.
Okay. I want to be clear. People are like, what? Listen, the state shouldn't exist, and I'd be glad to get the United States out of America.
That's a bold statement.
I can explain why every single so-called service that is provided by the state could be provided better without them. But so long as a system like this exists, this one issue is the hardest for me to write off, and it will come up in this episode today.
It's the key thing. So to bring everybody up to speed, we're recording today, Friday, the 23rd of January, and this Ekklesia Interrupta happened last Sunday. Some stuff has gone on since then, and so here's a quick timeline, and I'm going to read this so I get it right, everybody. First of all, Don Lemon live streams this whole experience. It's 6 hours long. You can go watch it. We'll link it in. There was a planned protest inside the city's church in St. Paul on Sunday, the 18th, 2026. And Lemon observes that it's led by Nekima Levy Armstrong, who's an ordained reverend and part of the Racial Justice Network. So when Jim said BLM protesters, that's accurate. This action, this church invasion, was part of Operation Pull Up, which was designed to interrupt the Sunday service and clearly try to make a point. Now, they chose City's Church because one of their pastors is an ICE field office director. And I want to quote what Armstrong told the Associated Press, quote, "When you think about the federal government unleashing barbaric ICE agents upon our community and all the harm that they have caused, to have someone serving as a pastor who oversees these ICE agents is almost unfathomable to me." End quote. So the Justice Department suggested they were going to make arrests earlier this week, and they did on Thursday. Armstrong was arrested for violating the FACE Act, F-A-C-E. We're going to talk about that, but it's a federal law that makes it illegal to use force against, obstruct, or seek to intimidate anyone in a place of worship or in a reproductive health clinic. One other person, Chantel Louisa Allen, forgive me if I'm blowing your first name there, St. Paul's school board member who was part of the protest has also been arrested. Okay, now that everyone has the background, Jim, throw away my notes. What is your response?
My initial response? They wouldn't dare do this in a mosque. And I have to admit, when I very first saw this, I was angry. I was offended. I don't offend easily, but I couldn't understand, the visuals of this and the place that they're choosing to do this is wrong. It's inappropriate. And I believe that there is a degree to which Christians, unlike many other religions, frankly, are easily vulnerable to charges of being hypocrites So if you could show that they're hypocrites, you can really hold them to account with that. And we are kind of purposely installed with chips to be martyrs or embrace a martyr complex. Yeah, as Christians, that, Muslims, to pick a group out, don't have. But it's not the same. Okay. You do something, you hold up an improper image of the prophet, you may get physically assaulted. You might get shot. There's not this large Christian terrorist movement out there. Okay. So they come in and they target a place that it's kind of easy for them to do. My first response was, this is awfully easy.
Yeah.
And
no security. It's wide open. It's public.
And it took a long time, as you're going to see here in a moment, for the police to respond. Yeah, it just seemed easy in my initial response. Now, I'm going to say you're going to hear some of my confession as we go through this today, because by the time we get to the end of the show, I have some very challenging things to say back to believers and people in church. And I don't feel exactly the same way as my instinct was. But my instinct was to be like, wow, this is wrong.
This is wrong. Wasn't there I don't know if it was an executive order, Jim, but some time ago, there was a decree policy that allowed ICE to enter churches without like a warrant or announcing their presence or anything like that?
And there shouldn't be. So to be completely clear, I believe in the concept of Ekklesia. And Ekklesia is the name that was chosen for the church. And we will at some point do an entire episode about this. We have to. It's a bigger topic that we can contain in just a few sound bites. But Ekklesia means basically the council of the entire city. And it's a governing name. It's not a name there's tons of religious names that could have been chosen. Temple existed, synagogue existed. The name that was picked at the time was Ekklesia, and it means a gathering of all the citizens, and it's a governing name. And it means that basically there's a place where governance on earth is happening. And both in the constitutional design and in my personal belief system, this is like an embassy. It's off limits. The U.S. government does not belong inside its doors uninvited. Now, that's really basic, and you can pick a you in this thing, but we've got a lot to cover today, so I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay, let's proceed with setting the stage here.
I want to go to the footage of the event, and we've pulled some clips, and I want people to get a sense of what happened here first. I think they need to see if they're watching, and if you're not, you'll still kind of hear it, but you'll be able to feel it. We're going to go to clip E, Bill. It's 55 seconds long.
You say that we have the Lord to stay in your house, to stay in
Hey, Meta, record.
Okay, so pause for just a second. I want to let everybody know what's going on here. The camera crew's outside. Don Lemon, former CNN journalist, is inside with a group of people that you will meet shortly. You're going to get to see them gathering and planning. And he is inside. That's his voice you hear saying Meta. And this is right at the moment where the leader of the group has stood up and begun addressing the pastor. The service was going on already. They are in the people are in the pews, so to speak. And this is the moment that the chaos begins to erupt. She starts up by getting up and interrupting and giving a speech to the pastor from the middle of the service.
You'll see people leaving from that red door on the left of your screen in a moment, too.
Yep, and I want to point that out.
So activists are now in the church, and they are protesting, surrounded the church on the inside. They have found out that one of the pastors at
Okay, now watch the side
here in the
door.
city, in the area.
Yep, there they go.
Down.
2 out the front, about 3 out the side.
3 have fallen. Okay, so 3 people have fallen. They're coming scrambling out. And the importance of to understand here is that there was a church shooting in the fall last year. Church shootings happen in various places. I happened to be traveling in June and drove right past one that had happened just a day before that made national news. So it's, we talk about school shootings a little more than church shootings, usually because church shootings end pretty quick. There's often somebody there to stop them. but there was a church shooting. So people are in panic and they start running out the door. They don't know what's going on. It's chaos. Their brain lights up and they take off outside the door. And it's very hard to make out, but Lemon begins explaining why they're there. Now, this is going to be really significant because we're going to cover his role there and why he's there. But I just want you to put a pin in that he explains within split seconds. In fact, I actually timed it out. It took 37 seconds after it started for him to reveal that he knew all along what they were doing and why they were there. I'd also like to run clip F if we could, please. This one is 61 seconds here. And this is what I call Don Lemon's sermon.
What the First Amendment is about the freedom to protest. I'm sure people here don't like it, but protests are not comfortable. And there are people here who are, I'm looking at a young man who's in the corner. He's frightened. He's scared. He's crying. People are leaving church. So, yeah. Guys standing up now saying, get out of there. He's screaming. They're trying to calm him down. So I don't know if this is what they deem as successful or not. But anyways, I'm not going to get in the middle of it because I'm not here as an activist. I'm here as a journalist.
So there's a couple things I want to observe about that. First off, you may have heard some hangups in the audio and glitch. The people who are watching on video can see very clearly that there's a sign at the bottom that says there's a bit rate issue. They had bad Wi-Fi while they were in there. This was, in fact, during some of the most important action and discussion that happens with Don Lemon, he's having internet speed issues. His whole trip in the car comes through clear as a bell. The part that it's boring as can be, except for one thing we're going to share in a moment. Everything else is they're having a hard time getting through. And now you get a sense of what it felt like to be in there. And there is a difference in response. And there was a woman off to one side whose hand was raised. She's holding a video cam in one hand, but she's got her hand raised. She's praying. She was in one of the front rows, and she's praying about what's happening there. She's probably not the only one. One of the people, there's an additional gentleman that's been arrested here. He is going around person to person, sticking cell phone cameras in people's faces, close up, as close as we are to our cameras right now. Yeah. But in their personal space, yelling at them about what horrible Christians they are, and how they need to repent of their actions and whatnot. Says they're full of hate. There's a guy in the middle that Don Lemon called attention to who is angry and shouting.
Yeah, the guy in the white shirt.
Near as I could tell, he's the only person who has this reaction in the whole place. And someone comes and sets a hand on him, and it is not one of the protesters. It is another one of the church attenders who is saying, calm down, who's saying, we're going to be okay, right? So you had some people who fled. And we didn't see all of them because the cameras come into the building. More did leave, enough that even Don Lemon could take note of it. And he is saying that there's somebody crying. And he does say in the course of the whole video, so it's a 6 hour and 47-minute video. Almost all the church stuff happens in the first, and the stuff we're going to share today happens in the first hour and 40 minutes, which I watched. So you didn't have to. And he does believe that trauma is part of what people should be experiencing at a protest. So he intends, or he believes, that this is the trauma that they would experience, not just hearing another voice, but trauma. He specifically uses the word trauma. And he's okay with the fact that somebody is there crying. There's no concern on his part.
No compassion.
Very little, which will be ironic for reasons you'll see coming up. So that gives everybody kind of a sense of what was going on there. So we kind of promised something at the outset that I would explain the one federal government power that might be somewhat legitimate. It's who watches the watchers. So we have seen historically that the federal government had need to intervene to tell states that they needed to follow their own laws. And that led to the federal government making its own federal laws, which I don't like, to be clear. There's only a handful, and it's debatable how many there are, but let's say 6, maybe 7, maybe 8 federal crimes, real ones, in the Constitution. And the Constitution is written in such a way that there shouldn't be any more on the list. Everything should be handled by the states, and the states are adequate to do that. But when they're not going to enforce their own law and rights are being violated, and the real First Amendment right that was violated here was the ability to worship, then there are federal laws that deal with these things. Let's hit 2. There's an irony here because Don Lemon is African American, and he one of the charges that he could be brought up against him potentially is violating what's called the Enforcement Act of 1871. Now, that's a tepid name for something that is better known by everybody in the business as the KKK Act. So the KKK had this fun little habit, and this law was back in the 1870s that this was passed, 1871 to be specific.
Post-Civil War.
Yeah. They would burn down churches. Sometimes they would let people out, and they thought, probably be even easier to burn it with people in them. And the government said, no, you can't do this. So the local government wasn't doing anything to protect these citizens, and so they passed a law. The law says that you cannot injure, oppress, threaten, or intimidate 2 or more persons who are basically coming to exercise one of the enumerated rights, including specifically the one they had most in mind was going to church.
Yeah.
And the law itself, the Enforcement Act of 1871, says you don't even necessarily need to be inside the church to have the interference occur. It could occur outside of the physical walls of the building.
If you and I got together in a park to pray and somebody decided to interrupt us forcefully.
Yes.
That would be a violation of the KKK Act.
It could be. It could be. That's exactly right. Now, what they need in order to do this, there's 4 tests, 4 of them, that they have to apply. All 4 tests, as I understand it, have to be met. And I'm not going to rehash the entire thing in detail. we're going to go over one of them because Nate, the lawyer, and I'm going to include his link, did a 14-minute video on this. It's fantastic. It covers everything very thoroughly. In 14 minutes, you can find out everything you need to know about the KKK Act as it applies to this situation. So instead of rehashing that, I'm just going to focus on one of the 4 tests, and that is intent. That is intent. You had intent to violate the right. So how do you measure intent? Well, taking some cues from Nate, the lawyer, I'm going to share some clips with you. We're going to start off with clip A, Bill. This one is 37 seconds long. What Don Lemon's going to begin explaining, he's outside. This is before they've gone into the church.
Yeah, and somewhere in a parking lot that's far away. They're
planning. So they're about 25 minutes away, roughly, from when the moment is going to happen at the very beginning. This is the very beginning of the video that we're hitting. We're 36 seconds into the live stream here.
Are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right?
Wait.
So the American flag or whatever, but
hold on. Do you see his logo?
Oh, yeah.
His microphone. Does that remind you of something? Does something come to mind?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wait. Dollar General. Yes, well, Dollar General.
Is he stumping for Dollar General? Maybe he has a backer, Jim.
Oh, it's Dollar Don. It's Dollar Don. This is cheap media.
Dollar Don.
He couldn't even swing enough to get good internet for this one. So poor Don. Dollar General.
Resistance protesters, they're planning an operation that we're going to follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up. And it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live. And these operations are surprise operations. Again, can't tell you where they're going and where we're gathered right now.
So
he's got to know. I mean, it just seems like he knows from the inside.
From the get-go. But he is describing how he is making sure he doesn't find out. So a journalist would want to know everything they could about the story. He is standing at a distance so he doesn't interfere with that portion of the operation. He doesn't want that information out yet. So he is intentionally protecting them from that information getting out. There's one funny thing in there. He says something about MAGA coding, and MAGA coding is apparently bringing a flag. So to all you people on the left, if you bring a flag, you'll confuse Don Lemon. He'll think he's in the wrong place. I don't know how many other people will get confused and think they're in the wrong place. They'll think, oh, that must be MAGA because there's the American flag. So that was a little interesting. Now I just want to continue. This comes about 5 minutes later, and this is a mere 8 seconds. They're in the car now on their way to the event. Oh, no, they're in the parking lot. Excuse me. Oh, no, they're in the car. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Right.
Yeah, they're in the car.
Yeah. And so they're going to, you know where you're going?
Yep, I know exactly
good.
where I'm going.
Okay, let's just go straight into clip C. This one's 9 seconds long.
Now, do you think if you just have it, I think maybe if you just have it on the church, but if they see me.
On the what?
They're going to know. No?
It just depends.
What?
Don't name the location.
I'm not naming the location, but I mean, I'm just wondering if you see me. The folks inside see me.
Are the congregants really on live instead of in service right now?
No, but they'll be like, "Why is Don Lemon here?"
Oh yeah, Sunday morning.
Sunday morning church.
Yeah. Okay, we'll see.
Like he's. Well, what else? It's Sunday, and we already said the church.
No, we didn't.
Yes, you said it.
No, I didn't.
No,
I did not.
No, he didn't. No, he did not. He's protesting because what ended up happening here is this is a moment of truth that slips out on accident. He wasn't supposed to reveal the location, and he says a church. Now, his defense will be that he said a church generically, okay? But what he said at the beginning was he didn't know where they were going. He was implying that he didn't have that knowledge, and he was trying to maintain that. And then the nervous laughter that's in the car is because the other two guys realize, the camera person in the back seat realizes, oops, you slipped up and you said the word church out loud, and we're live stream. There's no taking this back. We can't hit it, knock it out in post. You're revealing that you know where this is at.
And they all have the address.
Wow. I just...
And Jim, I don't know. I got to bring this up because it just rubs me the wrong way every time I see it. He's like, well, I'm Don Lemon. People are going to know who I am. So bring your ego to church, dude.
Oh, man, please forgive me in advance. I feel so bad even having to say this out loud. The man needs help. And I don't throw this around lightly.
I know you don't.
He is a stone cold narcissist. It is textbook. If you watch... Well, first off, if you're familiar with his media career, you already had a pretty strong clue of this.
Well, we've covered him more than once.
We have. We did another episode where we, when he talked to Elon Musk, this is the second time we've covered him. I was hoping I would never cover him again. There's moments throughout this entire thing, and the clips that you're going to see where his narcissism is full display. The worst of it happens when he's talking to the pastor. He's so much about himself and the way he talks to the driver of the car. There's a number of different things going on that just...
this isn't journalism. Journalism is objective.
Yeah. He's trying to make his way in this new media world. And so I don't know. I do believe he needs help. I really
sorry
do.
for the sidetrack, but it just hit me so powerfully, Jim. I had to say something.
Yeah, I get it. I felt it the entire time I was sitting through it. So the second thing that's being potentially violated here, you mentioned at the top, which is the FACE law.
Yeah,
so
FACE.
Yeah, stands for Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It's a 1994 Clinton era bill. Now, this is a U.S. federal law that prohibits using force, threats, or physical destruction to intimidate or interfere with people accessing or providing reproductive health services or exercising religious freedoms at places of worship, and also criminalizing damages to the facilities. It protects patients, providers at abortion clinics, fertility clinics, and places of religious worship from violence, harassment, and blockades. Now, if you're doing anything that looks like a blockade or it seems the least bit intimidating, then you could be a violation of this law. The bar for this is incredibly low. This was used a lot during the Biden administration. But here's the thing. As we are sitting here talking to you, as this event occurred on January 18th, there had not been a single case of this being used with a church It had only been used with abortion clinics. So the Biden administration, they were wearing this out. They were using this as much as they can, and it had been used in every administration to target people at abortion clinics. Mike Lee and Chip Roy in 2023 introduced a bill to repeal this thing. They believe it's of dubious constitutionality, and I tend to agree with them. Congress did two things. First, they combined abortion clinics with churches. So this is politics. You're trying to figure out how to get something passed. If they'd have just targeted abortion clinics, that wouldn't have worked, right? So they had to get both sides. So they put churches in it, even though it's never been used with churches until potentially this week with the charges filed against the organizers of this
So
thing.
just to be clear, were they after the Republican Christian right vote?
Yeah, they were hoping to get it too. Correct.
Okay.
And then Congress, the other thing they did was they claimed that the Commerce Clause in the 14th Amendment due process clause granted them the power to enact the FACE Act. But the Constitution, and again, I share their view on this, does not grant general police power. That belongs to these states and these local municipalities. But then the Dobbs case happened, and the Supreme Court found that abortion was not a constitutional right. Pro-life protests and sidewalk counseling are not commercial activities. How can you ban these things if they are no longer a federal constitutional right, is what Mike Lee and Chip Roy asked. So the question that we come down to is Don's journalism. Don's journalism. And Bill, he only has one thing that he can fall back on, Bill. Because I believe that he violated both these laws. And
it seems clear.
They already prosecuted some people for FACE, and that does not mean another indictment isn't coming down the pike, because the KKK Act is actually even more serious. It's a felony that carries about a 10-year prison sentence. And in Don's patter, as he's describing at the top earlier in the show, as you were watching the chaos unfold, he explains that the First Amendment covers the right to protest. Well, it kind of does. It does. I definitely agree with that. But in explicit words, it includes the ability to assemble to worship. In explicit words. So a First Amendment right was being violated there. So now he's grabbing hold of he's agreeing that there's another right in this. I just want to point out, he's saying, I'm press, that's in there, and protest, that's in there, but he's overlooking religion, and that's in there too. And press and religion, the ability to worship, are explicit, whereas this protest thing is less explicit. It's more implicit. And he's going to have to fall back on freedom of the press. So I want to say, he didn't mean to do anybody but himself a favor. But he did the whole world a favor. Because we have this entire scene documented. It's all on camera.
It's all live.
The organizers wanted this, even knowing what the risk was. I doubt they told him how much legal jeopardy he was putting himself in. I think Akima knew. I think she chose not to tell him.
Well, she's an attorney. She had to know. She's been doing this.
And you know what? He's been relying on CNN's attorneys to cover his rear end in the past, because they would have stopped him from doing this, or they would have told him what he needed to do to stay in journalist good grace. All things he did not do. All things he did not do. I guarantee that there are attorneys at CNN that when he worked in the past did all this for him. He paid little attention to these people, probably thought they were beneath him too, just like he thought the guy driving the car was, just like he thought the people in that church were. At one point, he refers to the people in the church as white supremacists. So I just think he just didn't understand what he was going to do. But let's still give him grace. And I still desperately want to let him off the hook. I still want him to be able to fall behind free press.
How can we measure this behind that activist journalist kind of argument?
Okay. That gets to my free press case, the Supreme Court case that we took.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I have two arguments I want to make. I want to make the free press constitutional case, but before I do that, I want to make clear that I think if he is prosecuted, this is not a good precedent to set for future cases and journalism being used. And I already feel in many ways, particularly during the last year, that the ability to report on things is getting squeezed. And, we had, just to pick one example out of I could pick dozens. And it went all the way back to Assange, and because he's a free press incident, right? So there's been a problem, a real problem, since the Obama administration here going on, as we've been in a state of war. But very recently, the Department of War dismissed all the real journalists, sent them out of the room, said you have to sign a waiver that you only report what we tell you to report, which is not the fourth estate that we had hoped for.
That's not journalism anymore.
So these gonzo independent journalists, even as they're activists, I want them to be able to be there because I don't want that future reporting chilled. I don't want it to go away.
Yep.
Okay. And the second thing is I participated in a free press case that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. And I have some very firm beliefs about that. Number one, the free press right is yours, Bill. It's mine. And it's for every person here who's watching. There is no institutional press. That's not what this is all about. This is about the fact that the rights are right next to each other in the amendment. There's the freedom of speech, or it's separated by the conjunction or, which indicates difference. Something else is coming. The freedom of the press. Both of them have a definite article at the front end of them. The, meaning they are a specific thing, separated by or, meaning that they are different things. Okay. So how is speech different from press? Press is what we're doing right now. It's a planned communication that takes money, right? So in order to get this to you, even though you may not be paying for it, other people did. There is a whole pipeline of services that brought this to you, and we pay. We have software that we use to record it. Bill and I are not working completely for free here. We're not getting much, but we're not working for free. There are expenses for the equipment that we use to edit and record and everything else. So I just want to say that's a planned communication. That's press. Speech you could do anywhere. I am doing speech, but this is a published or broadcast type situation. And that's what Don Lemon was doing as well. And that should be completely protected. Now, my involvement in this was that I was working for the Harry Brown campaign. And we initially, out of that campaign, we set up an organization called realcampaignreform.org, of which I was the president. We've talked about this, and we'll put the episode where we spoke about that also in the show notes. So you can go hear more about that. But in essence, our argument was that everybody that was coming together to support Harry's campaign or any other libertarian campaign or any campaign at all is engaged in press activity, because there's a lot of planned communications. And the idea that you could license that you could put a prior restraint on that the government can interfere with their ability to spread the message, that it could even tell the participants how much money they're allowed to put in. A restriction that's not on the New York Times or ABC or CNN. They don't have to reveal every one of their advertisers and how much they spent and how many hours they met with them and what reporters they talked to. All that stuff is journalistic ethics they might tell you, but they don't have to. And no campaign should have to either. So I have the most liberal position you could possibly have on this, that you should be able to, there should be no reporting requirements, no contribution limits for political campaigns. I don't want journalism of any kind. I don't want information getting out to the public of any kind to be withheld. James Madison in Federalist 10 put it best. He said, you want to know what the problem with faction is, which is one group of people putting out their propaganda? More faction, more people putting out, right? Yep. And there's a battle of that. There's a contest, and it's up to us. We have to be smart enough as the people who supposedly own the country to be able to decide what is right and what is wrong, who's telling the truth, who's lying to us, whose facts are better, stronger. That's our job, okay? Don Lemon put this all on full display, and as we'll cover in a moment, I don't think this quite worked out as well as they hoped.
Okay, so Operation Pull-Up, which was to disrupt the church service to make a point, right? How did it work? I mean, objectively.
Okay. So this is where we start to get in maybe a little bit of the heavier, more spiritual analysis of this thing. The church in question is a Baptist church, even though they're called Cities Church. This is very trendy to not put your denominational name on your building. Denominations come with baggage, so in an attempt to be what they call seeker sensitive, this has been a trend that's been going on since the 90s, really, where they don't actually put the name of the denomination on the church or even on their website necessarily.
Do you know if they're Southern Baptist?
Yes, so they're actually in the Minnesota-Wisconsin Baptist Convention, which is a subset of Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist Convention, okay.
Okay, so they are SBC people. And I'm not going to read, I have their statement here, but the thing that jumped out the most to me is that they wanted the law upheld. And they were even able to cite a state law. And you remember at the top where I said the mosques wouldn't do it. So Keith Ellison,
right,
who is a very progressive attorney general, former congressman, very upset about what's happening with ICE in the streets, as he should be, unwilling to act on this, completely unwilling to act on this. But I'm concerned about the church calling for further action on this. I think they could do a lot by saying, we're going to forgive this. I think they would look much better if they would say this. But they do have a problem. There is at least a speck in their eye. And I want to take a moment to look at it. So David Easterwood, this is the first time we're mentioning him by name. And I'm going to read what I wrote down in my notes because I want to make sure that I'm walking exactly the right line here. His name has been widely spread, first by the protesters themselves, but it appears factually accurate that he is an employee of the government. There's a C-SPAN screen cap posted in a Newsweek article that we'll definitely include for you in the show notes so you can look at it for yourself. And it has him listed in the Cryon as acting field director, St. Paul, for the ICE office. He's not just David Easterwood, though. The interesting thing about him, and I think you probably have a screen capture for us.
Yeah, I do. And this was taken, by the way, it's still the same. Let me pause it when we see him. There he is. This is still the same thing today. So even though we got a Monday screen capture on this,
yes,
he's still listed on the website as of today, the 23rd.
There he is, right there in the middle of the screen, and he is listed as a pastor.
Yeah.
So it is not our job to judge. So no one should take it upon themselves to harm this man in any way. I oppose and reject any violence being initiated against him in any way or his family. We have a lemonade on the porch ethic here, which is we would want to talk. So let me take people who've never been inside a Protestant church inside for a second. What I'm about to tell you is not going to surprise you. First, and this is going to be a shocking revelation, when I went to church, because I am now a done, when I went to church, sometimes I was sitting in the pews with Democrats. The horror, right? Like there's these sinners. And let me just say, it's supposed to be more of a hospital for sinners. It really is. Like if you said, oh, we're going to rule out everybody who watched porn this week, the pews would virtually be empty. If you were going to say everybody who cursed this week, everybody who, cursed at a driver on the road can't come. You see what I'm saying? Like, so there's like this tiered sin, like, certain sexual sins are really, really bad. But if you're a glutton, well, I mean, look at the people in the pews. You could see some people clearly have a problem with that.
Well, sin is sin, though.
Sin is sin. Okay. So it's really, really important for us to say first that it might not be the best, most merciful, just, good thing to actually kick somebody out or disassociate with somebody just because they're a sinner.
Or a Democrat.
But then maybe
or Republican for that matter. I mean, or libertarian, politicians, just because of their political views.
All right.
I mean, church is supposed to be about a kingdom that's more than that.
Okay. And, in some ways, we've just spent the last 3 decades going through this transition where we've had to begin to recognize that we should be trying to find ways to bring people in. The failure to have done so. That does not mean agreeing. That does not mean endorsing, but it does mean loving. Now, there's one more thing, and that is I'm a done. So at the moment, I don't have a pastor, and I'm not in some kind of building every Sunday. And the important thing I'm saying about this is this can't be done to me. So I've had people come to my house, and we've gathered to do some Bible study and prayer. We did a little thing a couple of years ago, a handful of times, we called Emmaus Eggs, where we just sat down and talked. And we did it on Sunday morning. And there's no way that anybody was going to be able to come in there and just take over the place. I want to say that there maybe the way that we're doing church might also be part of the issue here. I just want to put that thought in people's heads.
I think I need some help on that. So the way we're doing church, the traditional Christian way is where 2 or 3 are gathered.
That's what it should be. That's not the way we're doing church. What we're doing is we have buildings, butts, and budgets. We have a person that stands up and does all the work, and everybody else sits and receives. They're not ministering to one another. And we can have a whole show about that. I promise you, it's a big subject. I just want to put that thought out there right now.
I take your point. Yeah.
In 2013, I accidentally became the pastor of my church. We had defected to a little tiny church, completely independent of any denomination, completely self-sustaining. We had a pastor with an outside full-time job. I really liked him a lot. I enjoyed him immensely. But he needed to step back, and it turned out he had some personal issues. And when those personal issues came to light, he stepped down. He would have had to, based on how everything was handled. They would have asked him to stop being pastor. And he had recommended me, and very shortly after they made me the pastor. It only lasted 6 months, and frankly, the way it didn't end well for me personally. But I learned a lot. It was one of the most eye-opening experiences I've ever had in my entire life. It was really electrifying. Well, because I'm the pastor of this little church, I start reaching out to people to get people to come. I mean, I took it on that, like, okay, we got to grow this thing just a little bit. We got to do some things. And I'm just trying to like reach out to people. And I reached out to a fellow I had only met a couple of times. I had met him through political connections. I'm going to leave out a lot of details because I don't want to get in. I don't want him back in my life. His name, I'm even giving a fake name. I'm going to call him Walter.
This show is brought to you by the Zero Aggression Project. Zap newsletter subscribers get alerts when each episode is released. The Zap website is also the pathway by which you can contact us by email and support the show. This program operates thanks to tax-deductible Zap contributions, and we appreciate your support. So, zap the state, and have a nice day.
I met with Walter for 2 meals, but they were both hostile. It was weird. Like, he seemed angry that I had become a pastor. Like, it bothered him somewhere deep in the core of his being. And again, I only knew him from having crossed paths in political activity previously. He seemed like a great organizing guy, and I had no idea. I didn't really know him, his family, his character, or anything. I just started talking to him, and there was a hostility. He had me meet with a guy that he considered to be a mentor of his, who was an older gentleman, and they basically tried to run me around. I still to this day don't really know what their point was, but they were pretty bothered that I didn't understand their very opaque theology. The gentleman ended up coming to my church on a Sunday morning, and there weren't a lot of people. We had, we would have 30 some people for Sunday morning, and he stopped and interrupted the entire proceedings. Walter interrupted the entire thing. Now, what I should have done, I'm going to tell you what I should have done, is I should have immediately stopped and asked everybody to begin praying. I should have engaged everybody in prayer, and we should have let this process play out. And I'll explain part of why I believe that now before we go off air today. But I didn't. I got mad. And I told him to get out. And he asked for a vote. He wanted everybody in the room to vote. He said he wasn't going to leave peacefully unless that happened. We were going to have to use physical violence against him. So the stakes are pretty high at this moment, and everybody did vote to send him out. They felt he was a disturbance. He clearly was. And so it was unanimous, head by head. Everybody went through the room, and he ended up getting up and leaving. I don't understand to this day why he was doing what he was doing. I really don't. And we have no contact with each other whatsoever. And I'm actually grateful for that, because there was a little bit of Facebook follow-up, and it was not pleasant. But I did not handle that well. I did not handle that spiritually. I did not handle that because we are not allowed to use violence to defend the faith. That is completely off the table. And that is the history or tradition of martyrs. So there's a lot of people who don't understand what I'm about to say. We have Halloween, right? Halloween is Hallows Eve. It's Hallows Eve because, and we're remembering the martyrs, because the next day is All Saints Day. It is a remembrance of the people who have gone before, who were willing to pay the ultimate price for the faith. And that is supposed to be what people see. Something so profound that changes us so dramatically that it impacts, you could see it and you say, I want to be a part of that. But if you're angry at it and you attempt to destroy it, the way it comes back is it always comes back in the form of weakness, just like our leader who went to a cross, being God, and could have stopped it. So now, did this work? did this work? The answer is no. It's categorically no. First, the people who are trying to call attention to Renee Good and the violations of the acts that ICE is committing, which are atrocious and poor, and we've spent 2 episodes now covering this, they drove that story, the Renee Good story, and some of these other stories off the headlines for a few days and put this there instead. So that didn't help the cause. And then they lost hearts. So, everybody was beginning to side and understand what happened to Renee Good. And during this week, we've seen a Hmong man get arrested. But for a time, for at least a 48-hour cycle, we weren't thinking about that. We were thinking about this. So they lost hearts. And I'm specifically using the backfire effect. If you think that if you scare them, if you traumatize them, that you're going to get through to people, think about how many times people have come at you that changed your mind. I mean, like really came at you. It's not a moment. It doesn't cause reflection. It causes response, bad response.
Fear.
And so there's something to understand about the nationalism narrative. You have to understand these people. One of the things that some of these people believe, and it's just been written off as racism, is they believe that their Christian white culture is going to go away. Now, they don't mean white in the sense of racist necessarily. Many of them do, clearly. But they mean that like we have a certain tolerance that's existed here, and we've been able to practice our religious belief. This from the very pre-founding of this nation. We've been able to practice our religious faith here. And what you're doing, they're saying, if we let immigrants come in and they begin to overwhelm the population, that religious liberty and other liberties will go away. And you said, you know what would really help you understand what you're doing wrong? We're going to come in and interrupt your religious liberties. Hostile. We're going to impose trauma on you. And you think this is going to make them go, oh, okay, I've been wrong all this time. I was in the wrong. You think that the people watching this are going to change? Anyone's going to change their mind because you did this? No, the nationalists are going to retrench. So I'm suggesting that every church needs a plan. And I want to talk about 2 plans. I want to suggest that plan number 1 is going to be the bad plan, but it's going to happen all over the place now. There's going to be a retrenchment where these churches are going to be like, we are even more committed to ICE. We are even more committed to what is happening politically. We are going to continue to mix cross and sword together. This is what we're going to do. And we're going to speak louder for those things from our pulpits and in our Bible studies. They are going to retrench. And that is a bad plan. Okay? There should
it shuts
be a plan.
The door rather than opening it.
Yes. And it's the fault of the people who went in protesting. Okay? Just to be unequivocally clear, this is what they decided they wanted to do, was create a backfire effect.
And it has.
Yes.
It has backfired. So plan 1 is retrench. Plan 2
is a grace point. So Monique Cullors-Doughty, a Black Lives Matter Minnesota co-founder, told the AP about this story, quote, if you've got a leader in a church that is leading and orchestrating ICE raids, my God, what has the world come to? We can't sit back idly and watch people go and be led astray, end quote.
Seems pretty clear.
You've got a pastor here. It's not just another sinner in the pew. They have taken a role that is called shepherd. The word pastor basically means shepherd. They are a caretaker of a flock.
Yes.
The pastor himself, which we're not going to play the video, we're running out of time, but the pastor himself referred to himself, the lead pastor of the church, referred to himself as a shepherd. I have to take care of my flock. During the chaos, he understood, and I know what he's talking about, because when you take on that role, it's a heavy, awesome spiritual responsibility. You love and care about these people in a way that you didn't know was possible. I know, because I got a 6-month glimpse into being this. Man, I went to bed thinking about these people. They were on my mind all the time. And I know what his instinct was when he says, I've got to take care of my flock right now. Having understood that, I understand the role of pastor is a different, heavy role that you're taking on. And it's a higher standard to which you're being called. And it needs to be a job where you're exhibiting concern. An immigrant should be able to come to that church. A sinner of any kind should be able to come to that church and not in any way have confrontation with this person.
Yeah.
right? They should have care. There's a duty. So he's got two dual roles where I believe he needs to make a decision. Now, the people in the church also need to make a decision if this is how they want to be represented. And so I'm going to shock everybody, and I'm going to go back into the Old Testament here with this stuff. I'm going to go back into the Old Testament. In the book of Isaiah, the story is about Assyria. There's Amos, there's Habakkuk gets into Babylon. These are future invaders that are going to come and take the Israelites out of their space, right? They're going to destroy these it's now become two nations. They're going to destroy them. But Jeremiah chapter 25 says, therefore the Lord Almighty says this, because you have not listened to my words, I will summon all the peoples of the north, and my servant, underline that, my servant, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, which, by the way, biblically, the whole arc of the Bible, this is associated with evil. This is the terrible nation. My servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, declares the Lord, and I will bring them against this land and its inhabitants and against all the surrounding nations. I will completely destroy them and make them an object of horror and scorn and an everlasting ruin. I will banish them. And he goes on to say, he starts talking about all the terrors that will happen to him. He repeats something similar in Jeremiah 27. In verse 6, he says, I will give all of your countries into the hands of my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. My servant, there it is again, okay? And then in Jeremiah 43, he says it again. This is the Lord Almighty, the God of Israel, says, I will send for you my servant Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. And destruction follows in all of these cases. Now, in the Old Testament narrative, we find out that God also takes out these people too. But there's some kind of judgment that happens. And I want to lay it out this way. God is not suggesting that he is going to do all these terrors to you. What I really believe is being said here is that there is a mercy that is always in place that keeps us from really experiencing the full pain and consequences of the injuries we do to one another and the injuries we even do to ourselves. And it's delayed and whatever. There's this mercy that's constantly coming out of God. But eventually justice has to well up and mercy stops. So the natural consequences of behavior arrive. What the Old Testament prophets did again and again and again is they told the people, you are sinning. You are doing wrong. You are behaving unjustly to aliens and sojourners, to your first wives, to your children whom you've orphaned and left behind in poverty and sickness. You are not doing the right things. You are holding people, and Jesus comes along and adds to this. It's the religious leaders he singles out the most. This should be considered almost a warning shot. Like, what are we doing wrong? I had a friend that told me something similar many years ago. His name is Bill. And so, Bill, if you listen to this podcast, because he does listen to many of them, you'll hear I'm talking about something you told me one time. Told me, it's like when the trials start to hit, the very first question you have to ask is, what did I do? What do I need to change? What is God trying to say to me right now? And that's response two. And that should be happening in pulpits all across the country, because we have to have an examination of a very inhumane approach to a national problem that wasn't created by the people who did it.
Yeah.
And maybe they need to talk about their pastor. You know what would be a miracle? It would be an absolute miracle given how the Babylon crew in this particular thing, Don Lemon and all his friends, played this. It would be a miracle, but it is possible to pray for it and hope for it, that this church would go, oh my gosh, we have some examination to do. Or that this ICE employee would say, I have a choice I have to make between my job and my God. And I think that's where it's at. And I want to play one more clip before we go. We had several more that we want to share with you, but there's one in particular I want to share, because I do think there was a spirit in there that was still right. And it was exemplified by one guy in particular.
We love you.
Yeah.
My son and I love you guys.
Yeah.
And
I'm a journalist. They're activists.
The simplest thing we can say is that we love you guys.
What do you mean, you guys?
Well, whoever's here in this house.
Okay.
We don't distinguish between Christian and non-Christian. We love everyone, and we want everyone to come to heaven.
Yeah.
We want people to go to heaven.
We need a lot more of that. We need a lot more of that. And I got to say, even all these protests on the streets, even there, we need a lot more of that. And in the way that's being governed, none of it's possible. None of what you're seeing happening in the headlines is possible if we had a lot more people just wanting everybody to be loved and go to heaven. Thanks for watching.